Welcome back to Around the Shoe on the Bill and Doug Show. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, joined each and every week by two fantastic members of this robust Ohio State football beat. Bill, we got two good ones this week, don't we? Fired up?
Just more young guys showing up, making us look old. Yeah, but no, good guess. Yeah, good guess.
Yeah, no, and it's good. And these guys, Sam Cipriani and Greg Wilson from Buckeye Sports Bulletin, they were up until 8 a.m. Monday morning putting out the Buckeye Sports Bulletin, Ohio State, Michigan newspaper. Sam, what time did you guys actually get to bed?
I probably got to bed at around 4 a.m., but I live a lot closer than Greg, so
okay.
Late night.
Yeah, and your head hit the pillow what time, Greg?
I got to bed probably around 4:30 or so. You know,
look at you guys. I rocked like a solid 12 last night because like when you're my age, you got it. I was calling to bed at like 8:30. So Sam Cipriani, how long have you been covering or have been around Ohio State football?
So, I've been around Ohio State football all my life. I grew up in Columbus, but I've only been covering the team this is my second year now. I covered last year as an editor for the Ohio State student newspaper, The Lantern, and then this is my first year covering professionally, and now I'm with Buckeye Sports Bulletin.
All right. And Greg, how long have you been around covering the team?
Yeah, this is my third year covering the team now. All of them with Buckeye Sports Bulletin. My first day was actually the Sunday after the Indiana game in 2023, the season opener. I got right into it.
Nice. And you guys are young, and the journalism is flourishing. Sports writing jobs are just available and plentiful, and paying big money all over the country. Like, you guys are rocking it, right? You're just flush.
Oh yeah. Just money everywhere. I'm actually gonna lay back down on my bed of money back there. Right after we're done with this episode.
Yeah, that's why you stayed up till 5 o'clock in the morning because you're so flush with cash. Well, gentlemen, thank you for being here. We have 5 topics about Ohio State football that we want to discuss. We will both look back at Ohio State's win over Michigan and look forward to the Big Ten championship game between the Buckeyes and Indiana on Saturday in Indianapolis. Sam, we will start with you. When we look at this 27-9 Ohio State win over Michigan on Saturday, what was the best sign for the Buckeyes from that game that you think could be applied to the rest of the season, right? There's always like some very specific rivalry stuff, but was there anything that really stood out to you? Be like, oh, that's good for the Buckeyes, and they can take that into Indiana and into the playoff.
Well, I think there was a lot good to come from Ohio State's win over Michigan. I think the biggest thing for me was that it finally gave Ohio State a measuring stick. We hadn't really seen Ohio State be tested since week 1, and I think where it gave them the biggest test was challenging their run game. We finally got to see the true potential of Bo Jackson, I feel. We had seen flashes all year, but it was kind of hard for me to tell whether he was truly dominating or it was more so from a lack of challenge from Ohio State's opponents. They had been, playing a lot of inferior opponents. He had rushed for 100 yards about 5 times this season, but those games were against UCLA, Rutgers, Grambling, Ohio, and then Penn State, which is probably the most impressive, but that's not really the test that a Michigan or a Texas is going to provide. And we didn't get to see Bo Jackson against Texas. And what I saw from Michigan is that Bo Jackson's a hard runner. He's fast. He's strong. He can break tackles, against the best talent in the country. And he also showed that he can be a workhorse, something that I wasn't really sure about previously. He had, a season high and career high 22 carries, 117 yards on the ground, 5.3 yards per carry. The combination of him and Isaiah West, gave me a lot of confidence that the run game is going to be able to hold up its end of the bargain, as well as the pass game in the Ohio State offense.
4th in the Big Ten in rushing now, man. Landis, you were talking about that for weeks. That they played 3 terrible run defenses going into Michigan, and even while it felt like the run game was like rounding into form, you maybe didn't really know, right? And so what Sam's saying is like to show that against Michigan is different than showing it against Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers.
Yeah, it's way more meaningful. it was not that merely that Ohio State played bad defenses; they quite literally played 3 of the worst run defenses in the country. So it's just like, listen, like if that's the case, run the ball well, and they did. But it was still difficult for me to, wrap my arms around the idea that they had gotten their run game figured out until they played a better defense, and then they still ran it well. So I'm with Sam. I thought that was a huge development in that game.
All right, Greg, what popped for you that the Buckeyes can carry forward?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to cheat a little bit and go 2 things, but it's only sort of cheating because one of them is sort of an off-field thing. But number one, I was going to also go with the run game. Bo Jackson, I mean, he's looked different than the other guys the entire season, I think. But it's just, he was cutting hard. He was running physical. He more so than I've seen any Ohio State running back do this season, I guess. There were holes getting opened up by the offensive line. He was hitting them. And the other thing was he's making guys miss. That's one thing we haven't really seen, I guess, the rest of the year. Yeah, you don't really need to go any further than, it was their second drive after their first drive after the interception when he it looked like he was going to lose 5 yards on that run and just kind of that hesitation. That made 3 guys miss. And, if I'm going to talk about that play, I also got to give credit to Carnell Tate for just a great block on the outside there that he held for a long time. But I guess on that, I think you don't have to go further than that drive. It lasted third and fourth quarter, 20 plays, 16 runs, ended up in a field goal. But the run game, like you guys were saying, it was good against Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, but you had to see it against someone better than that. But I guess the second thing that I was going to say, that's a great sign for Ohio State. It was a video posted by, I think it was Nicole Shearer on Twitter before the game. It was Ryan Day coming out of the tunnel, Michigan fans heckling him. He was getting booed, and you just see him smirk. And that's just the attitude that Ryan Day has. I think that national championship really he didn't need anything more than that, I guess. It just, there's nothing blocking him from being like just great mentally at this point and getting his players to buy into whatever he tells them. So this guy feels nothing but confidence right now. He doesn't feel nerves. He doesn't feel doubt. And I guess how can you blame him? He's got a Heisman Trophy, possibly winning quarterback back there, and maybe the greatest defense in college football history by the end of the season, we could be saying. We'll see.
Whoa. Yeah. No, that got hot there right at the end. The greatest defense in college football history.
Maybe.
The dogs might have something to say about that, what we're talking about. But that's the level we're talking about here. I'm not wearing a Georgia hat anymore today. That's a good way of start with a smirk, end with humility. But I'm very pro smirk, Sam. The smirk matters, does it not? Greg's onto something here.
I mean, I think it just shows that he finally has that confidence. I mean, I think we've heard this phrase about 100 times this week that Ryan Day finally got the monkey off his back. Yeah. And, that weight lifted off his shoulders. I'm sure he and not only him, his family, the entire Ohio State organization and program, feels that weight lifted off their shoulders after beating Michigan for the first time in over 2,000 days. It was 2,000 over 2,100 days since Ohio State's last victory over Michigan before Saturday.
Yeah. I'm not good at math, but that's 14 years? I don't know what 2,100 days is. But You pro smirk, Landis? You pro smirk?
Yeah, the only thing I'm mad about is I didn't see that video until after the game, because if I saw it before the game, I would have put a mortgage payment on Ohio State to cover the 9.5 or whatever it ended up closing at. I might have even searched out some alt lines after seeing that smirk. But no, I think and we thought Ryan Day was looser and kind of presenting differently in the week before the game, and I didn't really think it was performative, but I wondered if he might be able to carry that through until Saturday, and it seemed like he did, and obviously put him in a position to manage that game much better than he has the last 4 years or 4 years prior. Just in the name of saying something different, because I'm sort of along the same lines as these guys. When it comes to the run game, I may focus specifically more on the offensive line, but just for the sake of going someplace else, I thought it was noteworthy that the defense did encounter a little bit of adversity, right? Michigan sprung a couple of explosive runs early in the game, just in a way that we had not seen before. Ohio State had allowed 4 20-yard runs all year, and Michigan had 3 on its first 3 possessions, including the first play of the game for 36 yards, which was the longest run of the year that Ohio State has allowed. So And I thought, like, I asked Ryan Day about that on this conference call on Sunday, and sort of about like how Matt Patricia is making adjustments. But within that, he said, like, when you encounter things like that within a game, it can be very easy for players to overcorrect, and then suddenly you're putting yourself in a bad situation and you spiral, and big plays just sort of snowball, right? And kind of build on top of each other. And for that to not happen, and for the defense to kind of just like regroup, and really by the time, probably the fourth time Michigan had the ball, it really did seem like Ohio State's defense more or less had the game handled. So they're definitely going to see better offenses moving forward, including this weekend against Indiana. I don't want to make Michigan's offense out to be more than it is, but to get challenged a little bit, I think, defensively in that game with those stakes and that environment, and to respond the way that the defense did, I thought was a pretty good sign.
Yeah, because they're right. I mean, Indiana's going to do some stuff against them, and then if they would face Oregon in the playoff, or if they would face Notre Dame in the playoff, or Ole Miss, like there are some teams that are going to do some things offensively that, like, again, they have not been incredibly tested during the course of the season. So they might get in a position where they have to figure something out, that it's not perfect the whole way through. So like that's good. Yeah. So Sam and Greg, this is something that Bill and I had talked about kind of going into the Michigan game. The idea that Will Howard last year was good. He was pretty good. And then he became a playoff monster. And we were sort of like just the reminder of like, hey, you have this picture in your head of Will Howard slicing and dicing people and just like leading Ohio State. But like, for the Michigan game, for instance, like, when he threw that early pick, it's like, well, he had thrown that early pick against Penn State. And so statistically, it was. And then he went nuts. Julian Sayin, playoff monster, is it now on the table? Like when we think about that, he's efficient. He makes the right play. If he does things wrong, it's maybe he doesn't take a shot that's there, but like he almost always does the right thing, right? And to throw a pick and then come back from that and continue to be efficient, but take the shot on fourth down to Jeremiah Smith, take the kill shot to Carnell Tate down the middle of the field when it was there. Like, I'm super curious if Ohio State gets the same kind of leap from Julian Sayin from the first 12 games into everything else that they got from Will Howard last year. Sam, like, holy moly, that's next level. And I do like sometimes I like quarterback mistakes too much. I like picks, this like, you shouldn't be trying to play perfect. You should be willing to make some throws. And so he got tricked, whatever. But that's now in my head a little bit, Sam, of if there's another level from Julian Sayin that began with, I made a mistake and I bounced back. Oh, mama, I think that could be something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really shows his resilience as a player. And like you said, sometimes picks, turnovers can be important for a young quarterback. I believe after the game, Ryan Day said he came right off to the sideline, talked to him, said it was a simple miscommunication where Julian Sayin thought it was cover one, but it was actually cover two, and the cornerback sunk under and intercepted the pass. And, Ryan Day said that Julian Sayin sat right down back onto the bench, didn't pout, didn't do anything like that, and bounced back. And we saw it throughout the rest of the game. He was poised in the pocket. It didn't seem like the pressure was too much. And even in an away stadium, I saw him running down the field. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the image of Julian Sayin shushing the crowd as he runs down the field after a touchdown. He seemed confident. And, if you're seeing that against your rival, that's only going to continue to build when, not necessarily that the magnitude is going to be less going forward because the games are going to matter more, but it's a lot less pressure playing when you're not playing against the rival and you don't have, a 4-game losing streak riding on your back.
He will not feel more pressure the rest of the year. They could play in a national title game while playing a more pressurized game.
Yeah.
Greg, I didn't know he was a shusher. I didn't know Julian Sayin shusher had been unleashed. That's next step. Like on the way to being a monster, you got to be a shusher first. So again, I don't think we want to underestimate the smirk. Greg, we don't want to underestimate the shush, right?
No, yeah, you can't underestimate the shush. Definitely not. There's no underestimating that at all. I mean, listen, the guy is, like everyone has been saying the whole year, poised. But what I go back to is just the Texas game and the post-game press conference when Ryan Day came out, and he was just so impressed with the way Julian was seeing coverages, the way he was able to read the defense, I guess. And ever since then, I've kind of been bought in on like, he can do this. You know, he can lead this team in really any game. He can do it through in a Michigan game. He can do it, I guess, through the playoffs. That's where, for me at least, I was like, I think this guy might be the real deal. You know, not breaking any news here. The 5-star #1 quarterback in the class is good, but
I can break it. You can plant your flag on that. Everyone else is afraid to say it. Greg Wilson is not. Julian Sayin, good. Own it, man. All right, number 2, Greg, we'll start with you. Has the pressure in the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry now flipped? And will it be on Michigan in 2026? Is it yes, it's flipped, no, or maybe somewhere in between there?
I'm going to say yes, but just in a different way. Just in a different way than it was on Ohio State. The pressure for Ryan Day was more so like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think they were favored in all 4 games that they lost. So
Michigan was like a 3-point favorite one year, but Ohio State was always higher ranked.
Okay.
I think they were a 3-point favorite in 2023.
That makes sense. Right. Yeah, that would make sense. But I just feel like that's where maybe it's a little different. It's like Ohio State is kind of expected to be this, 10 wins a season at the very least. That's the minimum there. But where I say the pressure is kind of reversed a little bit, it's now they don't have that anymore. They don't have the streak, and they're still coming off an 8-5 record, now 9-3, not going into the playoffs for 2 years in a row. Ohio State is just at a completely different level as a program. And again, I know I'm not breaking any news there, but it's just, how does Michigan get to that point? There are obviously ways. It's a Big Ten powerhouse, in this new world, but they kind of have to turn that around and get to the point that Ohio State can be at, which feels kind of impossible at this point. It's just, I mean, I guess for any team where Ohio State is right now, but it's just different. Like I was saying, I guess the bragging rights, certainly they matter, but they kind of needed that win, that streak, in order to have those bragging rights, because they don't have the dominance right now.
Yeah. Landis, you think it's flipped or no?
I do think it's flipped. Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, Ryan Day and Sharon Moore are kind of mirror images of each other, right? They each get a victory in their first game as the full-time head coach. And I think with Ryan Day, right, you look back and say, well, how much of that was just residual from Urban, right? And Sharon Moore is only one loss into this, so maybe it'd be unfair to ask how much was residual from the Jim Harbaugh era, but I think it would be fair to say that some was, right? And if we're going to have these conversations about Ryan Day's search for the right way to get himself in the best possible position to coach in this game and win it, I think you have to ask the same questions about Sharon Moore now, right? So I think Ryan Day has figured that out, and then now Sharon Moore has taken a loss, and he is sort of on the same journey. Now, it may be easier for him to find that answer because Ohio State's not cheating in the midst of him trying to figure that out. But I do think that is difficult for any coach in this rivalry. You have to figure out what exactly works for you. And I think for Michigan, as things are currently constructed, it's a little bit more of a challenge for Sharon Moore because he's also going to be at a talent disadvantage. They're going to have good players. Bryce Underwood's not going anywhere. Andrew Marsh isn't going anywhere. They're going to have talent, but the depth of talent always favors Ohio State, or for the most part always favors Ohio State. So that just kind of creates another hurdle for Sharon Moore and Michigan to try to get over now as they put everything they can into trying to win this game at Columbus next year.
So I just see a headline. Sometimes it's hard to read everything. I'll go back and read it. But the great Dave Briggs, Toledo Blade columnist, a fine fella, he had a headline.
Very tall.
Very tall. He had a headline that he said that he thinks Sharon Moore is now on the hot seat for next year at Michigan. And Sharon Moore, 8-5 in year one, 9-3 this year. So they're 17-8 in his first 2 seasons. And that was not my impression, because Sam, like when I think about Sharon Moore, quarterback issues last year, I think understandable. There was a crazy offseason. They were kind of late in the portal. They suffered through that. But then to beat Ohio State and beat Alabama in a bowl game was like a pretty strong finish at the end of last year. And then you're in the playoff mix all of this year with a freshman quarterback who did not play well against Ohio State, but lots of quarterbacks don't play well against Ohio State. And so to maybe like be building into the future with the number one quarterback recruit in the country that you decided to play as a true freshman, that's not where my head went. But as we think about the pressure and the rivalry flipping, it's both about the programs, but as Bill noted, it's also about the head coaches. Sam, would you think that Sherrone Moore could be on the hot seat next year?
Like you said, I was not under the impression that he's going to be on the hot seat after this season, especially considering, like you said, all of the punishments that have come down this season on Michigan. They're going to be losing, over $20 million, closer to $30 million in NIL revenue, and revenue towards the program from the allegations that have come down with the Connor Stallions and the sign stealing scandal. So like you said, that combined with all the things with the quarterbacks last year, you can't really prepare for multiple of your quarterbacks going down through the year. And I feel like they'll at least give Sherrone a chance to stick it out through the remainder of the Bryce Underwood era, and give him a chance to build something for his freshman quarterback, who still has a lot of room to grow, but can elevate the potential and is going to not only help them now, but allow them to bring in more talented recruits because of who's going to want to play with that guy.
Yeah. Anyone else think he might be on the hot seat going into next year? Greg or Bill? Anybody think yes?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I could see it.
Okay.
Because I also don't know. Think of how he was hired, right? Jim Harbaugh leaves like late and abruptly, and there wasn't really an opportunity to kind of scour the planet for his successor. They just kind of went to the guy down the hall. So I think when the search happens that way, you could be a little more apt to make a change quicker than you would be otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of in the same area right there. I think it's, and I always, when these conversations are happening, I look towards Indiana right now, and it's just like Curt Cignetti has set expectations just at an all-time high level for every other coach across the country. It's just, he went to, Indiana. It's the losingest program of all time until he got there this year. They just crossed that threshold finally. But those expectations, maybe they're a little unfair, and I think they are, but it might be realistic that teams are expecting that now. Programs are expecting that now. The other thing for me is next year, how does Bryce Underwood actually develop? I mean, he's obviously got the talent. We've seen that from him. He's got a great arm. He can run. He's a big guy. The flashes have been there all year. It's just, what does he look like in year two? I think is going to be a big part of that. You got to be able to develop your guys.
We got a little read on that, like Nebraska this year after playing Dylan Raiola as a true freshman. And like, I think Dylan Raiola was better in year two, but I don't know if it was like a linear development that was like, okay, it's definitely pointing up. And now here we are. And the rumor mill is wondering if Dylan Raiola is going to transfer, right? So it's like that. When you play a quarterback, I think there's a lot that can be gained if you're willing to take a couple lumps from playing a true freshman quarterback, but then you got to show in year two that it was worth it. Otherwise people start asking questions. All right. My answer to this is, has the pressure flipped? I am just always curious about equilibrium in the rivalry. And there just has not been equilibrium in the rivalry since John Cooper took over. And I have some stats that I want to use in a later question, but like, that's what I wonder about, that they're both good. Ohio State's more talented, but Michigan's also good. And somebody wins 2 in a row, then somebody else wins, then somebody else wins again, then somebody else wins. Like, and that's what it once upon a time, it was that. Kind of the way it grew in the modern era of college football was because it was that, more or less. Not exactly even, but there was an equilibrium where, I don't know, there's pressure on everybody because they're your rival and you want to win and you're both good, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And so I am not rooting for anything, but I am super curious of does this rivalry have to have something where there's much more pressure on one side? Or could it be just like, yeah, of course we want to win, but it's not that every guy who loses is in danger of losing his job because it's part of a streak. So I think maybe it could get to that point. I'm not sure that it can, but I'm curious about it. Sam, I know I already asked you about Sharon, Sam, but like just in general, do you think the pressure is flipped?
Well, I want to preface by saying I think no matter what, there is going to be pressure on both teams in the rivalry. You don't just win a game and get to sit on your butt for 365 days and wake up and, go play the game the next year and hope you win. You have to, continue the grind, continue to keep pushing. With that being said, I think that, like you said, there hasn't been equilibrium in the rivalry since the Cooper era. And honestly, you could even argue that it hasn't been, almost exactly equal since the 10-year war from 69 to 78. And, with that, it's just been, pockets of time where Ohio State's more talented. They're recruiting better. They're having the better coaches. I'm going to throw it back to the Meyer era where, kind of where I grew up. They dominated Michigan every year, especially, in the, those early 2010s after the Fickle year. Ohio State was just getting much better recruits. That was, a pocket of time where, Michigan just didn't have the talent as OSU, and, they couldn't keep up with the Meyer teams. And then, switching after COVID, then you had those Michigan teams that, were super talented under Jim Harbaugh. And now are we going to see, like you said, in kind of your question, are we going to see that flip back to Ohio State under the Moore era? So there's always going to be pressure, but I think for Michigan right now, it's really, really important to, be able to get back on track before it happened in the early 2000s and early 2010s. Sorry, it gets to be a snowball effect, like it's seeming to become a pattern of.
Yeah. I'll be very curious. I think it'll be a fun conversation leading into the game next year, and like certainly more fun for Ohio State fans. But I think like trying to figure out what the future of the rivalry is will be a good thing. We'll get a little faster here. We had to spend time on Ohio State.
Can I ask you a question before we move on to the next one?
Time on it. Yeah.
What your view on Sharon Moore relative to equilibrium is what? Like he's the guy that can get Michigan there, or are you still unsure of that?
So I think like an equilibrium to me doesn't mean equal, but it maybe means like it's 65-35, like it's similar to what like Alabama Auburn was during the Saban era, when I think it was like 12-7 or whatever. That okay, clearly one program is better here, but the other team is good enough to not take things for granted, to not lose 10 in a row. And like, can Sharon Moore be that? Do I think Sharon Moore is going to be as good, as successful recruiting, developing, building a program as Ryan Day? Probably not. But can he be a worthy adversary? And I think he showed that right in 23 by being the head coach in that moment and finding a way to win. I think he showed that in 24 with the way they finished, when that season could have completely gotten away from them. And instead they ended it with wins over Ohio State and Alabama. Like that to me showed something, that there's a belief that he can keep a team from falling off a cliff. So to be the adversary in the rivalry, not an equal, but a challenge, I think he can be that. Now, the question is, would Michigan be satisfied with that? So, equilibrium to me does not mean 5-5 in the next decade, but does it mean 7-3? Like, could Sharon Moore win 3 of the next 10? I at the moment, I would say, I think he could. But then the question is that enough? Or would Michigan say, well, okay, actually, we think we can go get, a more established head coach that we think could be Ryan Day's equal? I would be curious about that.
Yeah, I'm a little wait and see, I think, on him. He's got the 2 wins. I guess you want to give him the interim win against Ohio State, but like there's not much else on his resume, big win wise, in 2 years to show that like he's got a little something to him. Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, it's like, hey, got Bryce Underwood. It's like, well, did he? You get credit for it. But I mean, like, they won the Andrew Marsh recruitment. Like, again, they had a 5-star tackle who got hurt. So, and then just for the record, we understand he does not get credit officially for the Ohio State win. It goes on Jim Harbaugh's record. But, like, he was on the sideline. So, all right, we'll go a little faster. Landis, we'll start this one with you. If the Michigan game and the chase for a national championship are both 100 out of 100 for Ohio State, like they matter as much as they can matter, What is this Big Ten championship game out of 100? Not the Big Ten championship game in general. This year, this opponent, this moment is a what out of 100 if Michigan and the Natty are 100 out of 100?
Like a 71 maybe. Like I think still fairly high, right? Like not the end all be all, but they give you a trophy for it, right? So it's like, and it's a thing you put in your trophy lobby, and it's a way for a team to be remembered. And I think, in a more generally, you don't hold the Big Ten championship in as high esteem anymore. But I think since Ryan Day has a national title and he has the Michigan win, adding a Big Ten trophy to this last 300 and whatever days of Ohio State football would be a little meaningful. And then also to do it in a 1-2 game, right? In the Big Ten title game, I think adds another layer to it as well. And the fact that they haven't done it in so long, I think matters, right? So it's a little higher for me than it would be generally given some of the parameters we're talking about.
Okay, so you're 71. That's where I was too. I was going to say 70, and I felt like this is something that we heard from our Substack subscribers, and we'll just take a moment here. We'll do a little promo. Bill and Doug OSU.substack.com. That's our Substack where you guys can subscribe and get 2 extra shows a week just for subscribers. You get all of our written content there. We engage with people. We take questions. We answer them on our shows. We have a lively game chat. And Bill, if you're watching this on Monday, if you're not a subscriber at all, just tell the people we have a little special running here on Cyber Monday on December 1st if they want to sign up.
Yeah, it's good through the end of the day Monday. So if you're not listening to this on Monday, sorry. But 18% off an annual subscription right now through the end of the day on Monday for the next year, 18, not for Tate Martell, but because Ohio State beat Michigan by 18 points.
Yes. So, and then if you miss this, but you can still sign up for a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription. It's $12 a month. It's normally $100 a year. So we're grateful, and we got to do this because we got to try to feed our families. So we're appreciative of all the things we get to do here. But on that Substack, I wrote on Sunday night because I asked Curt Cignetti and Ryan Day about it on the conference call on Sunday, because it felt like something that fans were saying, like, how much does this really matter? So Ryan Day, I thought, gave an interesting answer of he does question it in the playoff era, and he wants to make sure that winning a conference championship fits into the playoff picture in a certain way. And this is not the time to go into all the details of if they go to 16, what would it mean? And now you can still get a bye even though you lost the conference championship game and all this kind of stuff. But he did go there. But I kind of believed Signetti and Ryan Day for different reasons when they said that they are going to kind of go all out. This is something they care about. So I would say a 70 out of 100. Sam, what would you say?
I would honestly go closer to an 82 and 85 if Michigan and the Natty are 100. Okay. I honestly find it a little challenging to devalue a conference championship, considering Ohio State has only 3 goals every single year, and that's beat Michigan, win the Big Ten championship, and win the national championship. They already got the one this year. They've done the national championship within the calendar year. The only one they haven't done within 6 years is win that Big Ten championship. And the last time they did that was, in the January of 2020. Yeah. So, it's going to be a battle. Like you said, both Signetti and Ryan Day seem to have put stress on this game as not just another game before they embark on their playoff runs, but both programs want to win, and Indiana is going to want to come for that. They have never been in the Big Ten championship before. They had never even won 10 games in a season prior to Signetti's arrival. So if you're Ohio State, you're always shooting to win the national championship, and I like you guys said. I guarantee you every single person on that team would tell you Michigan and the national championship are 10 times more important than the Big Ten championship. But it's still important. It's still, like you guys said, gives them a trophy and another piece of hardware under their belt.
All right. Greg, what's your number?
I was, to be honest, I was in the 70 to 80 range too, I think, when I first thought about this. But I guess also just to go a little different here, I was thinking about it while what guys were talking about it. I'm just going to go 100, just with what they're feeling right now at this point in time, going into Saturday. They say all the time, like Sam said, this is one of their 3 goals, and I believe them. I'm sure they can take a step back and rationally look at this and think, this game maybe doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But then you think about the psychology of it. It's just, there's that football part of their brain, the competitive part, the I want to go out and hit somebody part, where it's just like they want to win every single competition that they go out there into. And they have the chance this season to be 16-0 for the first time ever in college football history. I mean, that they can complete all of their goals now. So I think Ryan Day, the team, really want to win this game this weekend, and then I guess they'll have those conversations later.
That's a compelling case, because I think there is the generic, like, in a vague way, how much does a conference championship matter in the modern era? But there is some specificity to this moment, the chase for history, something they haven't done. That I definitely see where you're coming from, Greg. So I think that could be the right answer. And I do also think that, like Ryan Day talked about, like when they go to Indy, there's always a bunch of Ohio State fans there. It's gonna be a bunch of Indiana fans there. It's an hour from Bloomington, and there's a bunch of, like, it's in their home state, and so Landis, like, it could be raucous. It's
going to be a road game. It'll be a road game.
Bunch of fans, because sometimes you go to a Big Ten championship game, it can feel a little hollow. I think there's going to be fans from both sides who are going to fill that place, and they're going to care. And I think they're also going to bring some energy that it might be the most energized that we felt Indy feel in 15 years, because these two teams are going to have a bunch of people there.
I actually haven't looked at the market to see what the ticket prices are, but think like neither one of these fan bases, regardless of what happens on Saturday, is going to have an opportunity to watch their team play a home game again, right? So, because they're just going to get buys and go play in bowl games. Proximity favors Indiana. There's also an Indiana basketball game in Indianapolis that day at 2:00. They play Louisville. So I expect a good turnout for Ohio State, but I think it'll feel like a road game for the Buckeyes, and I do think it'll be. I think it's always been pretty cool being there. We were there last year when it was Penn State, Oregon, and maybe wasn't quite as good in terms of environment, but it was still okay. There have been other Ohio State trips there that have been quite good, but this will be the best environment the Big Ten title game's ever had. It won't be close.
Yeah, I think that's a definitive fact. All right, question number 4. Before we get to it, I just would like to say, go see our friends at Roback.com, RHOBACK.com. You go there, you go to the game day collection, you start shopping for your whole family, you knock out your Christmas list in like 15 minutes. And then people are going to open their gifts on Christmas. They're going to be like, Sam, are you kidding me? What a generous and beautiful gift. And then, Greg, when your family opens things, then you can also say, and also I saved 20%. because I used the code BAD20. So you guys won because I gave you beautiful gifts, casual attire, but that's classy, that has the Ohio State logo. But also I saved 20% thanks to Bill and Doug. BAD20 is the code. Roback.com, RHOBACK.com. Use the code BAD20 to get 20% off. Question number 4. Curt Cignetti said that of Ryan Day, he'll be one of the legends of the game someday. In talking about Ryan Day on the Sunday conference call to preview the Big Ten championship game. That compliment was then relayed to Ryan Day, who frankly was like a little taken aback by it. He sort of didn't know what to say because it's so nice. Curt Cignetti, and I think most people know this, but he also reminded people of this on the call on Sunday because he was talking about playing a 1-2 game. And he said, I was lucky enough to be part of this when I was at Alabama, and we played Urban and Tebow in Florida in consecutive 1-2 games in the SEC championship game. Curt Cignetti worked for Nick Saban. Was Curt Cignetti being magnanimous and a lover of college football and an admirer of Ryan Day, or was he feeding him rat poison? Did he mean it? What percent did Curt Cignetti mean it? And what percent was he trying to soften Ryan Day up for Saturday? Bill, we had talked about the idea of like Curt Cignetti, what a great rival, like a guy that you kind of want to go beat, right? Who's other than Michigan? Like when I think the last time Ohio State really had that was Brett Bielema at Wisconsin. Like, oh God, like there's something specific about this guy. And like just with Signetti and the swagger that he brought last year, and Ohio State beating him last year, like, and then he was such a swell fella on Sunday. I was like, what a great representative of college football. But I think he softened me up. So did he mean it? I think he did kind of mean it. I'll say 75% Curt Cignetti meant it. 25% he's trying to fatten up Ryan Day before Saturday by feeding him compliments. Sam, what's your breakdown? Did he mean it or not?
I'm going to go with 90-10. He meant it. I listened to, both Ryan Day and Curt Cignetti's press conference, and, both of them complimented each other multiple times throughout, gave them each their props. Ryan Day, talked all about how great of a job Curt Cignetti's done building up the Indiana program over the last 2 years, bringing in transfers, totally reimagining that program over there. And like you guys said, Signetti called Day, a future legend of college football. And I think he really does mean it. Curt Cignetti is one of the best coaches in the game himself. And when he sees, what Ohio State's done, and he's seen it firsthand, he lost 38-15 last year in Ohio Stadium. So he knows firsthand how dominant Ohio State, has been over the last year and how hard it is to do the things that Ryan Day has gotten Ohio State to do. And, Cignetti's not the only media member or coach that has, gave major props to Ohio State. Pretty much everybody and their mother was saying, how freeing it was for Ohio State and Ryan Day to finally be able to beat Michigan this year. So I don't really see it as a smoke screen. And if it is, Curt Cignetti's an evil genius, and, maybe he's, doing things that we can't see ourselves, but I personally think that he was being pretty genuine.
All right. So, Greg, Sam clearly got suckered by Curt Cignetti. Did you? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I could be right. That could be right. What's your breakdown, Greg?
Yeah, I think I got suckered too. I think it's a real compliment, honestly. It's just because from my perspective, it's just hard to imagine that he'll be wrong at this point, about that. Ryan Day's got a national championship. He's got the highest winning percentage in college football history right now, higher than Newt Rockne from the freaking Stone Age, for goodness sake. I mean, that's the type of record that's not supposed to be broken. It's like the MLB record of 75 complete games thrown by a pitcher in a season that's never going to be touched again, but it's just – I know Ryan Day is going to be coaching for a while, and that's a living, breathing stat. And he could lose his next 10 games or whatever. But I guess while he has that, and while we're watching this, it's hard to imagine that Cignetti's going to be wrong when he says that. Maybe there's a small possibility he didn't mean it, but I think he did.
What's your breakdown? Give us a number. He meant it what percent, and it was smokescreen what percent? Greg, what's your actual full breakdown of the number?
My full breakdown, yeah.
Like, I guess I'll go 90-10. Was it real? 90-10.
I guess I'll go 90-10, like Sam said.
Guess who's not going 90-10? Guess who's not going 90-10? Veteran ball knower Bill Landis. 4 years at Alabama for Curt Cignetti. Me, little old me, coaching against a future legend of the game. What chance do I have? I'm just little old Curt Cignetti from IUP and Elon and JMU. I'm just lucky to have this job going against a legend. What's your breakdown?
Yeah, 10% genuine. I'll flip it the other way, because listen, like Greg's right. There's truth to it, right? Because Ryan Day is the head coach at Ohio State with a national championship. Certainly capable of winning more, and if that is the case, he is by default a legend of college football. I am in no way disparaging Ryan Day's coaching acumen. The motivation for Curt Cignetti putting Ryan Day on a pedestal is to make his win over Ryan Day more impressive, right? He called Dan Lanning a phenom before he beat him in Eugene. And he's calling Ryan Day a legend before he thinks he's going to beat him in the Big Ten championship game. So I'm not saying he doesn't mean it, but I think you guys are being a little too generous with what his motives might have been for saying that.
That's true. His motives are a little different. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Just because it's true doesn't mean he means it, or just because it's true doesn't mean he doesn't have a motivation for saying it, right? Like, is Ryan Day a very good coach? Yes. Why did Curt Cignetti point it out? Just because he's a fine fella? Maybe not. Rat poison. He's feeding him rat poison, and like me. Last one. This is looking back at the game again, fellas. You young folks over there. Your generation, and this is where I wanted to talk about sort of like the equilibrium in the Ohio State-Michigan game. So just to remind people, in the 37 years of Woody Hayes and Earl Bruce, running the show for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State had a 21-15-1 edge over Michigan in those 37 years. So it's clearly an advantage, but it's not domination, right? Like Woody didn't win 15 straight against Michigan. And then Cooper came in and it was 2-10-1. And then Tressel and Urban combined were 16-1. And then we know that Ryan Day lost 4 straight. So just as a reminder, I want to do this like generationally. I thought of it as like, maybe when you're 5 years old is when maybe you would have a first memory of an Ohio State Michigan game. So it's not about when you're born. It's like I tried to think about like when you're 5, the first thing that you could remember. So the people who came up and like their first exposure to Ohio State football was that equilibrium, was in the Woody or Earl Bruce era. Those people are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s today. Right? Like that's if you're that age, you came up in a time when the rivalry really mattered, but nobody was purely dominating it. If you were exposed to Ohio State football in the Cooper era, you're like in your 30s and maybe early 40s right now. So you are like, you bear the scars and you probably don't take things for granted. You don't, you can't shake that. It always influences you. And then if you came up in the Tressel and Urban era, you're in your 20s, you're in your late teens, right? You're maybe like 11 to 29, like these, like you guys, right? That it's just like, what? Ohio State beats Michigan. What are you talking about? And so now this generation who came to the game through this 4-game losing streak, like they're in elementary school, but like this generation even if Ohio State gets it back now, is going to share at least a little something with some of the Cooper era people. So I think like that, again, the older people, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you understood it when there wasn't the kind of pressure where it's like, holy moly, somebody's getting their butt kicked. So Sam, I want to start with you. As someone who grew up at a time where Ohio State was dominating, what was it like, and what do you think it was like for your friends and family and your peers and your generation to then see this 4-game losing streak for Ohio State when you were raised on the Buckeyes dominate the rivalry?
So I'm 22, turning 23 here in a couple of weeks now. So I was born in 2002. So, I mean, I wasn't conscious enough to remember most of the Tressel era, but my first time really remembering the game was the Fickle year. So I actually I kind of started off on a loss, but after that, it was all wins from there. So I was in elementary school in 2012, and I was in college the next time that OSU lost. So, if that tells you something about how dominant Ohio State was over my childhood, I feel like you can't really put it any better than that. And it wasn't just they were beating Michigan, absolute domination, scoring 60 points on them in the last win before that. 2 years before that. And then, I get to college in 2021 and OSU loses for the first time. I'm like, what? I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was Thanksgiving break. I'm just sitting at home in my room, and it was an unreal experience for me. I mean, I honestly just kind of sat in bed and I didn't know what to do with myself. I mean, I basically sat there and pouted for an entire day after they lost. And I mean, I had never experienced it before. So like, how else am I going to know how to control my emotions? Yeah. And then 2022 was even more shocking because I thought Ohio State, had that game in hand with how good that offense were and their receivers. And then 2023 was kind of the first year when I was, I've been talking with my friends and they even felt it this year, a feeling of almost impending doom when the game was coming. And, for my entire childhood, I had looked forward to the game, got up on, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I was like, OSU's going to kick Michigan's butt. And, we'll live happy ever after and go to the Big Ten championship and, I was living in Buckeye fantasy land. And then, 2021 through 2024 happens. And it was honestly a reality check. And honestly, I think it was really important for me to be able to, process the rivalry and see both sides and, see how truly both fans want it, because I never really realized how bad the other side wanted it until OSU was losing. So it was really interesting, coming into my time as a reporter after 3 straight losses, because honestly, 2024, and for all of us, it was probably the most shocking of them all. And, experiencing that on the field, it was an unreal experience for me. And it's just such a change. And I feel like the kids that are growing up now would agree with me that, they won't ever experience anything like the feeling of before a loss from 2022 to 2024, where, you just feel like your gut is dropping before the game because you're so nervous about winning.
Yeah. Does this make you like you and Sam are going to go hang out with like a bunch of 37-year-olds who were introduced in the Cooper era and you guys can bond over this stuff? Do you think has it scarred your generation here, Greg, these last 4 games, and were you living in fantasy land too?
I don't think necessarily I was living in Buckeye fantasy land, but, I completely get the feeling though. The feeling during that stretch, I mean, Michigan really might never win in the rivalry again, at least on a bigger scale. They might get one here or there, but it was hard to see it keep completely flipping, even for a 4-game stretch like it did over the last 4 years. And I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this on an Ohio State podcast, but I'm glad that it did, honestly, just because I've been watching for the last 5 years from a more neutral perspective, and maybe that's why I feel that way. I covered the 2023 and 24 games, but man, I mean, these last 2 years of the rivalry have been more fun than I've ever had in any sort of way involved in this rivalry. The emotion that is involved with it now, it feels so much more heightened. And maybe that's partly because I'm on the field for the flag planting and the emotion that came with all that. Obviously, that leaked over into this year, but it just didn't feel like this, at least from my perspective, for such a long time. And, I never really experienced before that what it probably did feel like for so long before the 2000s.
Yeah. It's interesting, Bill, and I think obviously, like for you and I, the thing that it relates to me is like my first year covering Ohio State was 2005, and so I've covered this team for 2 decades, but I covered the team for 15 years where they didn't lose to Michigan. It's like the one time they lost was the season that exploded, but otherwise, when Ohio State had a normal season, they beat Michigan every year. And so, like, I didn't even catch the one Tressel loss. Like, what was that's part of it, Bill. I think it affected like sort of how we covered Ohio State. Did it not? Like when you covered it in the era of like, I've never covered a Michigan loss. I don't know how everybody's going to react.
Yeah, that was the thing. It's like, because you want to provide the fan base what they're looking for, right? After a win, it's easy, right? But the first one was shocking because like you just weren't entirely sure that it was ever going to come, right? And that made it difficult to cover. And then like honestly, after like 22 and 23. It didn't get easier, but unfortunately for Ohio State, like you kind of got into the rhythms of covering a loss to Michigan. But then last year was just like so out of left field. It's like I don't really hard to kind of synthesize and try to contextualize and look ahead from what that could possibly mean. And then they quickly kind of put that to bed by winning the national championship, I guess. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to try to wrangle this rivalry. I think that's what makes it great. And I don't know that the people who live and breathe with it every day and every year probably don't care about our side of it and how difficult it might be to cover at times. But I think the biggest thing is sort of what Greg said, like whatever it is, there's an appreciation with covering it because of what it means to everybody involved.
I will say I spent a lot of time in those first 15 years being like, is there a bigger rival? Should we not have green pens now? Is Michigan State the rival? Is Clemson the rival? How does that? Because there was just such an assumption with Ohio State, Michigan. It's like, hey, this is the greatest rivalry in college sports. Like, I don't know. The same team wins every year. Like, what are we talking about? And so like that, I will never ask again, like, Hey, Mark D'Antonio's Michigan State replaced. Okay. They've lost, it reset it for me a little bit too. Yeah. All right, we got to go do some stuff. We have more coverage to do this week. Sam Cipriani and Greg Wilson from Buckeye Sports Bulletin. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy week to join us. Sam, where can the folks find you, find BSB, find your coverage?
So you are going to be able to find us at buckeyesports.com, and we have a variety of online, and then as well as we have weekly publications throughout the football season, bi-weekly throughout the majority of the basketball season from January to April, and then we publish our magazine monthly throughout the summer.
Okay. And so, Greg, you guys are still making the real stuff, right? In this digital world, you guys are still making a real thing. And I bet you there are Ohio State fans out there who still keep what you guys produce as keepsakes, right? As mementos of what's happening in a season. And that's kind of a cool thing, is it not, Greg?
Oh, yeah, it is a cool thing. Yeah, we saw our coverage of the Michigan recap on College Game Day last year after the loss. It got kind of slapped onto a table at a bar in Ohio State, just the cover we had there. So it is pretty cool to see all that. Yeah. So, if anyone still likes to have, physical print paper in your hands, I know that's not a ton of people these days. Our publisher, Frank, would kill me if I didn't mention this. You can get 4 free issues if you just call 614-486-2202. You can get 4 free issues, no obligation. Don't have to give a credit card number or anything. 4 free issues sent to you.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet
bargain. Deal. Yeah, that is a great deal.
Oh, yeah.
Man, we're giving 18% off, and we're like, oh, look at this great bargain. And you guys are like, just take it for free. It's one. Here's 4. That's fantastic. Go check out what Sam and Greg and their crew are doing over there at Buckeye Sports Bulletin. Thanks to both of you guys for joining us. Bill Landis, you and I are still covering the team, yes?
Yeah, we are. Yep. They're still playing.
Yeah. So Bill and Doug, osu.substack.com, here on the YouTube feed, here on the podcast feeds. We're grateful that we get to do it. We're honored that we have great members of the media come join us every Monday, and we're having a good time, and we'll keep doing this. So for now, for Sam, for Greg, for Bill, I'm Doug, and that was Around the Shoe on the Bill and Doug Show.